is our intro for today because we don't have any intros and we're kind of running, we're running by the seat of our pants. So hopefully soon we'll have our opening back up and we'll have the promos and to make it easier so that when we're self-producing, we know when we need to pay attention and when we don't. So we have to kind of fake our promo time and all of that kind of stuff. So we're all good. All right. So, hey, so we'll talk to Kelsey and see how she's doing this week.
Hi, Bridgette.
Hi, Kelsey. So how's your week been?
It's been a heck of a week, I tell you what.
Okay, well, give us the inner report of how the week is gone and then an outer report of how the week is gone.
Inner growth then would be, I guess, rapid acceleration is what it feels like. And then all the outer stuff was kid in ER, kid getting dentist filled whatever cavities, and getting a car, getting a van, finally getting the car to get to the van and finally getting the van. It's been a week. How's your week?
I don't know. Inner report feels like a lot of things that I've needed to accomplish to like close the past. Internally, and really try to not get my inner world so much balanced. I think my inner world's doing really good. I feel stronger, I think, than I ever have. And I feel like I have my own mind and, I really working well with my emotions and even just keep moving forward and just not falling into the emotional riff. And, but the hard part is trying to balance it with the outside. But I think I'm getting a hang of that, as well. And outside, well, there looks like all kinds of stuff's going on, collective and within my personal vicinity. But I think overall it was a pretty busy week, but I'm okay. And things are okay.
Felt like a productive week.
Yeah, productive.
Moving, flowing all right. Eventful, but productive.
So what was the biggest thing that you got out of this week? Let's say emotionally.
I think confidence. I've been meditating on confidence a lot for the last, I don't know, 3-4 years, and what that looks like and how that goes, and like the boundaries that come along with that, and communicating, and throat chakra stuff. And I just feel like I've gone up another level, or I've like just I've created a stronger foundation emotionally, or I've just added to the strength of the foundation that's there. And I just feel like anything that's like any growth from here, anything from here is just up. And then if it like things crumble, it's fine. The emotional foundation, things are like solid. And I think just things, I'm just looking for momentum, I guess. And like anticipating more flow, I guess, or more speed with the flow, right? Like the acceleration. I got like the vehicles in my mind. So acceleration and growth and commitment has really, really stood out for me this week. And I think just recognizing how difficult commitment is, and like having to make the commitment, the car payment, and like, but committing to a vehicle, like it's like another baby, another child, or like another extension. And I think like committing to those things outside of ourselves, or for myself, I guess, committing to something outside of myself or creating an extension outside just makes me feel a lot more like solid, I guess, or secure emotionally, which is kind of cool. What about you?
Well, I think emotionally, this word that keeps coming around, probably for, I don't know, maybe about 5 months, because I've always done I've always been taught by a lot of male teachers, and especially native medicine people and shamans, and I've had a few female teachers, but they've been tough. They've been like super tough as well. And so I haven't really worked with a lot of, I don't know, I guess subtle or softer energy, and like always the warrior jumping out there, and getting it done. And so the last 5 months, this word comfort just keeps coming up. One day I was standing in the kitchen, and this voice said, "What do you want right now?" And I said, "I want comfort." And they're like, "Well, what kind of comfort?" And I'm like, not the comfort of owning a house or a mortgage payment or anything like that. I want to be baby bundled, baby burritoed, kind of a feeling where I just feel like everything's intact and it's in, and I don't have to think about anything or worry, and I'm warm, and I'm just, gazing up at the sky, maybe watching the clouds go by. And so this week was like really culminating that, that kind of that idea of comfort. And I started really recognizing that the comfort first has to come from me, right? I mean, this is law of attraction 101 in this world, if people want to believe in that. But so what I do is what, is attracted to me. So this week I was like really comforting myself, every time it was like a big hurdle, I'd be like, yay, pat myself on the back, pat myself on the chest, and do a little jig and be like, okay, you did it. Okay. Trying to give myself a little bit of comfort. And yesterday I went to the hot springs and soaked for a bit, and that was super, 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 super comfort. So, yeah, so on the comfort thing, and things that would make me comfortable are probably different than other people, like slippers, fuzzy socks, a hot pad, an infrared sauna, the hot springs, you know, cooking a good meal, being with my dog, sleeping in. What
Nice
else? I don't know.
bed. Yeah. This
But
time in bed with a cozy dog and breakfast in bed. Good food in bed.
quiet. Quiet is really comforting too.
Soft and fluffy things.
Yeah. So how was your mental? How'd you how do you think your mental layer was this week?
I feel happy. I feel like balanced and happy. And I think a lot of that's because we've been doing some work, or you've been doing some work with me too, and then just like work around here. And I think when you say comfort too, like security comes to mind more. And so I just feel like mentally like more and more secure, or at least more like focused on purpose. I guess purpose is the word that keeps coming up. Maybe not so much life's purpose, but I guess honing in or like lining up things. I just have like a bow and arrow kind of like eye on the target, and everything's kind of like, if I can just get it in perfect alignment and hit my target, I think. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what life would be like there. I guess from like another mental plane. But like I guess mentality is, it's hard to describe like what exactly mentality is, like mentality but versus the emotional stuff. But I think the emotional and the mental stuff are more in harmony, maybe more so than ever, which is cool because my body feels more in harmony. Like just more appreciation for subtle details. Like I really had to be patient this week. Really just had to just like sit through various forms of discomfort and to be very patient. And I'm proud of myself for being able to like stay in the same headspace or like keep my eye on the target and not be just so distracted by all of the things outside of that.
That's good. Yeah, no, I'm kind of in the same thing. This week I think the last, 3 months I've been able to kind of really kind of deal with some stuff mentally, about how not real this world is. And like I tell you all the time, it's a slow and lethargic reality. And you have to stay with it for a long period of time. I mean, sometimes you're like working on something, chiseling away for 20 years before you see, positive, negative, or,
Anything, yeah.
outcome. So I think this week I've realized like that statement, what you resist will persist in this world. And really, sometimes I have so much stuff going on simultaneously that it's so difficult to arrange it all and manage it all in the course of a day. But I'm starting to realize when I don't and something falls off the plate or gets, pushed back, that stuff comes back to haunt me in some way, shape, or form, just because it went rogue or I didn't really put some attention onto it and I didn't navigate what my intention for it should be. So it just went crazy, like energetic cancer. So
Yeah, we talked about what time was I think last week too. And I think it's really easy in the context of time and wanting to do all of the things to get very overwhelmed and to take on a lot. And that has a lot to do with being a business owner too, and being able to work for yourself and work and be flexible and navigate and take into consideration all the unexpected things that come up in life. And then all of a sudden all the unexpected things come up at one time and then time is poof out the window.
yeah, but also making really good time, getting you of the time that I may be stuck in, making really good use of it to make sure that I check everything and, cross my T's and dot my I's and I have that intention, at least an imprint in almost everything. So at least I'm projecting an outcome and not allowing some of it that I just can't deal with, fester and erupt into something I don't want.
Well,
But yeah.
timing came up for me earlier today, like just coming to the realization that it's all about timing and just getting really good at timing. Timing it all out, right? You just have to.
Patience. That's where patience comes in,
Yeah.
I think, for sure.
Expecting the unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this week our topic, and um, at the end, instead of a practice, I have this amazing video at the end because I thought, well, we could talk about, like how to heal um, our topic, codependency, but this video just says it all. And let's see. Oh yeah, I love this. I wanted to do this poem too. It's just this really beautiful poem by this guy named John O'Donohue, who died all of a sudden, very young, in 2008. He was just amazing, a really beautiful human being. I was listening to an interview right before he died. This is one of his poems, and it's called "To Bless the Space Between Us." to come home to yourself. May all that is forgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquilities. May all that is unlived in you blossom in the future, graced with love. Anyway, I like that poem. It was a applied anthroposophy opening for the class, not this week, but last week. But I just loved it. And I looked into John Donahue, and he's just was this really beautiful human being. And in case anyone's interested. But anyway, so at the end of this, I have this amazing video by this amazing man who's a Shaolin, and he gives some unbelievable advice through a story he tells. He weaves. But
Fun.
so yeah, so I thought the topic should be like codependency, because a lot of people don't know what codependency is. It's kind of the root of why everything's wrong in our lives. I really dived into codependency in the 80s, late 80s, for about 5 years. And it's a very deep topic. And a lot of people don't really understand like all the stuff that it covers. So here's a few. Codependency, you could have a codependency with an addict. Codependency in a romantic relationship, codependency with a child, codependency with your parent, codependency with your friends, codependency with your boss or your job, codependency with your career. You know, you could have codependency with food. You can have codependency with just about everything. Excuse me. All right. All right, so I wrote a blog, and there's just a couple of things on here that I just kind of wanted to throw out. And this is what I wrote on the blog when I put it out. It's a codependency blog. Codependency, a statement of control and conformity of early behavior modification that creates codependency tendencies in Americans. If you cannot say anything nice, don't say anything at all. This statement, among many, set the stage for children to not ask questions, expand, or confront lies or misinformation. They're afraid to be caught as not nice, being mean, even bullying. The other issue with such core training in early development is that no one knows what being nice is and what not being nice is. Only the person controlling the construct of the reality of the child does in their understanding, and it is made up of their own behavior modification that had been done to them previously. So this is the definition. This is a definition that I found of codependency. Codependency is a behavioral condition in a relationship. So the relationship, remember, can be anything that's outside of you, your relationship to it. Behavioral condition in a relationship where one person enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. Among the core characteristics of codependency is an excessive reliance on other people for approval and sense of identity. So here are some. I'm going to ask Kelsey if she'd like to add anything, and then I was going to list the symptoms of codependency.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about codependency, because I've been taking that boundaries without guilt course, taking in little bits of information here and there when I can. It's supposed to be for the month, and a friend of mine is doing it. But some of the excerpts that I listened to today, ironically enough, brought up codependency and how it's related to our boundaries and how we express those boundaries. And you hit a lot of the points or I think in regards to classical conditioning, try to understand what it is. It can be challenging because you're right, like what is nice and what is good, or what is, like, those are judgment words, and they're judgment values, and it is different for everybody, and it's culturally different as well. There's different cultural expectations, but I think what's hard to navigate is whether or not codependency is a positive thing or a negative thing, because we tend to use the word or explain the word codependency as a negative thing. But part of what people are, or people are a gregarious species, so we rely on other people. We are interdependent upon others to do certain things, especially like the parent-child dynamic. But to an extent, because what happens when that bond is disconnected or severed somehow, or if it's not there, or whatever the connection is, then there's still this sense of needing to belong to a community or needing to identify. So I'm glad identity comes up within this as well. Yeah, I think codependency is an important topic to talk about.
And codependency is about you.
Yeah.
It's not about other people. It's you.
It's the same with the boundaries too. It's creating what you need to be good, to be in a healthy space, without impeding upon anybody else's, and so on and so forth. And that can be a difficult dynamic to manage, but it's super important to have those lines and to know what that dynamic is, and to know what the self is and who you are and what your needs are and what other person's needs are and how we communicate that.
Another thing too is boundaries don't necessarily mean that we're going to get along.
No.
It means like, here's my boundaries, and if another person is like, yeah, I just don't really like those boundaries, it's okay for them to not be our friend. It's okay for them to not be in a relationship, and it's okay for us to still have our boundaries and not change our boundaries to suit other people.
I think
But
it's
there's
like the Renee Brown
communication too.
something. Yeah, I think there's a video clip or something, like a Brene Brown video clip that I had watched on it, and they made somebody in there made a really good point of, I can seem to be not kind or can be not nice, but I can still do so in a loving way, where I can be really kind but not really have any loving feelings towards myself or others. That really stood out for me today.
Okay, so we'll head into the symptoms of codependency. It's kind of long, so, but it's thorough. So there you go.
Cool.
Symptoms of codependency. The following is a list of symptoms of codependency and being in codependent relationships. You don't need to have them all to qualify as codependent. And this is the other thing, because codependency is about you, your boundaries are about you. You know, you can decide to do something about it, and you can decide not to at the same time, because it is about you. This isn't like something that, I'm like putting peer pressure on, or any of that. People just kind of take everything as with a grain of salt, and if you want to feel better, make some changes, and if you're not ready, it's okay for you to stay in your quagmire. Okay, and number 1, low self-esteem. Feeling that you're not good enough, comparing yourself to others is a sign of low self-esteem. Let's see. Number 2, people pleasing. It's fine to want to please somebody you care about, but codependents usually do not think they have a choice. Saying no causes anxiety. Poor boundaries. Boundaries are sort of an imaginary line between you and others. It divides up what's yours and somebody else's. And that applies not only to your body, money, and belongings, but also to your feelings, thoughts, and needs. That's especially where codependents get into trouble. They have blurry or weak boundaries. All right, reactivity. A consequence of poor boundaries is that you need to react to everyone's thoughts and feelings. If someone says something you disagree with, you either believe it or become defensive. Caretaking. Another effect of poor boundaries is that Another effect of poor boundaries is that if somebody else has a problem, you want to help them to the point that you give up yourself. Control. Control helps codependents feel safe and secure. Everyone needs some control over the events of their lives. You wouldn't want to live in constant uncertainty and chaos, but for codependents, control limits their ability to take risks and share their feelings. Sometimes they have an addiction that either helps them loosen up, like alcohol, or helps them to hold their feelings down, like workaholism, so that they don't feel out of control. Dysfunctional communication. Codependents have trouble when it comes to communicating their thoughts, feelings, and needs. Of course, if you don't know what you think, feel, or need, this becomes a problem. Obsessions. Codependents have tendencies to spend their time thinking about other people and relationships. This is caused by their codependency and anxiety and fears. They can also become obsessed when they think they've made or might make a mistake. And sometimes they lap into fantasy about how things should be. Okay. Dependency. Codependents need other people to like them and feel okay about themselves. They're afraid of being rejected and abandoned, even if they can function on their own. Others need always to be in a relationship because they feel depressed or lonely when they're by themselves for too long. Denial. One of the problems people face is getting help for their One of the problems people face in getting help for codependency is that they're in denial about it, meaning that they don't face their problem. Usually they think the problem is someone else or a situation. They either keep complaining or trying to fix the other person, or go from one relationship or job to another and never end up the fact that they have a problem. Codependents also deny their feelings and needs. Often they don't know what they are feeling, or instead focus in on what others are feeling. Ooh, that's the healer paradigm. Okay, problems with intimacy. By this, I'm not referring to sex, although sex dysfunctions often is a reflection of intimacy problems. I'm talking about being open and close with somebody in an intimate relationship. Because of the shame and weak boundaries, you might fear that you may be judged, rejected, or left. On the other hand, you may fear being smothered in a relationship or losing your autonomy. Painful emotions. Codependency creates stress and leads to painful emotions. Shame and low self-esteem create anxiety and fear about being judged, rejected, and abandoned, making mistakes, being a failure, feeling trapped by or being close to, or being alone, being trapped by being close to somebody or by being alone. Other symptoms lead to feelings of anger, resentment, depression, hopelessness, and despair. When the feelings are too much, you can just go numb. It's Kelsey's turn. Dun, dun, dun. It's like a tennis game, right? So I'm batting it back over to her corner of the woods.
Let's see what stood out to me. Well, what kind of came up for me too in some of our discussions is the stigma centered around psychology and counseling and seeking mental help, and that, like, the denial part, the needing to maintain control, and but to it'd be really great if we could destigmatize needing mental support. And I think that alone would solve so many different problems, because it would give us means to teach people how to communicate and to be empathic and to know what empathy is and to be able to hold space without giving away energy. That's really important, because there's so much about stuff that's dysfunctional. But caretaking came up too, and caretaking came up in the class, and we talked about caretaking a couple of weeks ago as well, and that how to balance like self needs within that, and then also when it comes to cultural stuff, especially some more modern stuff where there's just these, I guess, concepts maybe around how we describe what these relationships are, because like there's caretaking but self-care but being selfless or selfish, or like how do you balance these interconnections and things, because I think on one hand or another, people, and all people, because if we're a gregarious species, we have the tendency within communications, especially maybe not with everybody, but perhaps there are certain people that these codependent relationships are stronger than in others. I guess it's like the half, like needing half of somebody, or like the cup half empty thing, or just like people not understanding that everything is so integrated. I don't know, things are so compartmentalized. So I don't know, because there's certain expectations I think that people have. I think expectations, like with the obsessions, with like the anxieties and fears that come up, because I think a lot of our miscommunication comes out of having anxieties and having fears and not being in present time with people, and responding to all this past conditioning and not processing and moving through things, right? So they're responding to or reacting to things on a subconscious level. But there's these personal expectations that we have on things, and like these cultural expectations that we have on things, and as things, well, we see it a lot in Reno right now, where we're at, or kind of in northern Nevada, really, where there are a lot of various cultures migrating to the area. So we're watching how things are expanding, but how there's cultural clash and cultural conflict as far as community identity and what things should look like. My mind just goes to tools, like how do we give people the tools or bring people's awareness to it if it's not a collective effort?
Well, I think that's an important thought, because I think for people not having codependency and developing properly, or in a place where they grow up with, I guess, more surety about who they are. I think, they can look back at, different types of tribal, even native tribes, and growing up. But that's like a whole other story. But, growing up, say, for example, when you become of age, the medicine person takes you out and you go out in nature. And, for example, sometimes, the medicine person will go find a place in nature that you've never been to. You don't know where you're at. Dig a hole in it. You stand in it, naked. You do lots of days of different types of detoxification and prayer work. Each tribe's a little bit different. And then, you know, you go in the hole, or you're left out there for your vision quest or whatever else it's going to be called. And then you have to stay there until the medicine person comes back, and you don't really know exactly how long that's going to be. Depending on that time of the year, you could get really cold, you could get lots of things happen, so that you can get out of your comfort zone, so it can kind of crack your mind open in a way that you can get a vision, you know, um, from spirit or the creator. And then, you know, the medicine person will usually ask, you know, traditionally what you saw, and it helps them to figure out and guide them towards, you know, guiding you in where you should be within your tribe. I mean, obviously, you know, if somebody has, you know, more, you know, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual inclination towards being the hunter for the tribe, or the who knows, the food grower or the harvester, to go out and do herbal medicine plants, or that, you know, help, that are really good at, you know, taking things apart and putting things back together, you know, and having everybody doing the right and perfect job that's good for them in the community. And I think that would really help. It would help to heal lots of different kinds of things, you know, alcoholism, drug dependency, codependency, a lot of these things that, you know, we're dealing with in cultures like American culture, you know, would simply completely vanish. Loneliness, I mean, you know, being by yourself, I think, can be really, really scary. But for me, those are the only types of communities that I see that work really well. And we don't really have any of those kind of communities, you know, really operating anymore. And I see in different countries, they still have some traditional, you know, tribal people that are living in their tribal ways. And, but yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, the lack of community. I mean, think about this. If you were living in a really good community for yourself, you know, the community would have a car that everybody could use, or maybe somebody's, you know, the community driver, somebody is really good at that. And so they take that job. Like anybody needs to be driven anywhere, or you got to pick up groceries or supplies or whatever else, you know, on and off the farm or the land, you know, that's their job. So you don't have to worry about that part. You just have to worry about your part, you know. You don't have to worry about whatever is going on. So if your job is the food cooker, or the food comes in, you know how many people that you've got to cook for, and you know, you start in the morning and make sure that they have, you know, all their meals and everything's cleaned up. And you might be good at that job, or you might be good at growing the herbal plants, and then you might have somebody who's good at making the herbal medicines, and um, somebody who fixes the car, right? That's their job. And so everybody has their place, and takes care of, you know, what they want to take care of. And you know, the other key is that if they want to change their place, that they are always given that opportunity to go to somebody else to learn something else, and maybe take over another place, right? So there's always also the space that you don't have to be the same thing or do the same thing all the time, that, you know, when you're ready to learn something else, that there's space and there's opportunity, you know, in order to do that, so that you can grow as well. So everybody grows. But you know, in the type of culture we're dealing with, we have to wear all those faces at once. I remember listening to this woman who's a comedian, and she was really funny. This was like about 20 years ago. And she said, it got to a point where her and her husband were going to get a divorce. They had 3 kids, and she said that, you know, she mostly, what it all boiled down to was that, you know, she was home taking care of the house and everything, and the only thing that he was really doing was working. That's how she felt about it. And that she just really didn't feel like she was, um, you know, appreciated in it. So she sat down and she wrote out a bill to give to her husband for the course of the week. And she would have things on there like 5 hours as a psychotherapist, for her husband and the kids and whoever else, right? So you have like 5 hours on there at $125 an hour. Then she had, housekeeper for 20 hours a week and charged, $25 an hour for that. And then the receptionist and secretary, making everybody's appointments, making sure everybody gets there on time, um, you know, bird dogging the phone calls and all the messages and just everything that needed to happen. And she charged something like, I don't know, $18 an hour for that. But anyway, she gets down, as a chef and like all these jobs, right? Um, and then she gets it done, and for like 1 week of work, it's like astronomical. By the time she gets done, it's like $2,000 or something like that, right? And so she gives it to her husband, and he's like totally shocked. And at first he's like totally mad about the whole thing, but then he thinks about it and he looks it over, um and he realizes, like, there's just no possible way that she has, any space for her to have growth or have, periods of her own life, where she, wants to go. So in the end, they worked out more where she got time instead of, paid for her bill every week. But she needed him to see, like, so I think, and it goes for men too, we all are having to like deal with all these different things in our lives, get the food bought, get the food cooked, get, the laundry done, get the car fixed. Oh, the car broke down, got to get it towed, got to make sure the insurance is paid, so much stuff going on that, I mean, some days you don't even get a shower. You don't even get like your basic needs met. But if we lived in a good community, and I've been on and worked on and consulted for over 30 communities over the last 20 years, and I hated all of them. And very few things that I find that I liked, but they were all like really would have been difficult to live in long term. So I'm not talking about the communities that, we have sprouting up as workable, but has to be something a little bit better that's more workable, so that so we could get rid of a lot of things like codependency, and children just wouldn't grow up in a system that would allow them space to feel that way or become that way, because they would be, doing what they need to do as their own growth and education and being supported and comforted and cared about, in a greater community that could give them lots of different tools from lots of different people as they figured out who they were in their community in a safe baby burrito way, a safe and comforting way, instead of under threat, trying to make a decision about what you want to do for a career. It seems like, it's emergency or coming under threat because everybody just wants to make money, or they have issues, and they choose jobs that, are related to their long-standing issues. Be nice just to do what you were born to do. That was your only choice. Do what you're born to do.
I think in one hand, we kind of do. We can't not do what we were born to do. I don't know. But then I think how the global culture begins to develop and how we begin to shift into a global identity, we kind of get into the weird thread of the one world order, right, where everything's all the same and everything's robotic, or how whatever the book series, where people are given the one job and that is the thing that they do, but they can't see out of the gray area. There's no color, no sustenance to that. And so I think on one hand, America tries to do it, but it can be so cliquey, and I think it comes down to resources and availability, and if the people don't have their basic resources and needs met, then there's going to naturally be inner conflict. And so within a systems of hierarchy or levels of importance, communities kind of naturally form and bond together. But I think this is where where consciousness is really important when it comes to shaping communities, because we have an understanding through our history and being able to project ourselves forward to, I guess, anticipate human behavior. And so if we can anticipate human behavior and we want to like mentally ascend as a collective and step into a new understanding, or like we would have to be open to communicating things in new ways. And
Well, we'd have to be open to discussing the truth as it is.
I watched
Because I
something
think
recently.
that's what we
Yeah.
get away from, is the truth.
I think talking, like words themselves, make the truth really difficult to understand fully. Like I watched this weird, I think it was a documentary or something. I saw it on Disney. But it's like where they project themselves forward into the year 1 million. And in the year 1 million, everybody's telepathic or they have telepathy. And then they were talking about like the ethical boundaries in telepathy, or how do you know what you would just know, you would just like be able to sense and feel into everybody's consciousness and see memories, or how we would learn to navigate to create those things would be the challenge. I guess what I'm trying to get at is if there's a way that we can convey emotion and feelings and stuff without words so much. Maybe this is why I love art so much. I think art's really important in the shaping of the cultures and the communities. I'm trying to think of how it's all related to codependency, though. It's challenging. And I can't help but
Well,
go philosophical road.
yeah. Well, it's that's why it's a good topic. At the second hour, I have a quiz people can take. So we have an interactive quiz. One of the things I, really brought this up for me this week was I had to break out of some mental, codependency type stuff, like things that people taught me, places I should never go. For example, I had to start working on some paperwork to file a small claims against some people. And it's interesting, like how there's, a lot of this inner stuff that's in there that makes you feel bad for having to do something that is honesty, right? And truth. And in trying to hold people accountable to that. So basically filing small claims is like me setting boundaries, like you're not going to get away with doing this to me, and having to deal with the emotional stuff of part of me just not wanting to deal with it at all, just wanting it to kind of go away. It's a really kind of interesting thing. And then also I had kind of an outside experience this week where I have a video up on my YouTube channel about, I forget what her name is, but it's from the Reno Hive. Oh, I think her name was Tabitha. And the Reno Hive is this place that they put together on one of the floors at Arlington Towers, where it used to be where all the really wealthy people, penthouses, people lived. And they took over the whole area to make like workspaces and stuff for people that were cheap and affordable and membership. And anyway, I had a situation that happened with her. I was going to teach classes there, and it turned really bad, and she was just really, really evil. I was actually shocked about how evil she was. Seriously. So I put the video up, as being not codependent, caring about what other people think, but also putting it up, taking personal responsibility to notifying the public, like, hey, if you decide to go over there to Reno Hive and you do research about it, here you'll find my video and you can see what my experience was like. I'm not trying to make that your experience, but you should be cautious because this person is really, really a terrible person. So this was like maybe a year ago that I put up the video, maybe even 2 years ago. I don't know, something like that. I get a email from this girl who was dealing with Reno Hive and this person, Tabitha, and it wasn't a really good situation. And the person got really emotionally kind of harmed in it. And then they did research and found my video. And so she emailed me and said, you know, thanks so much for putting that video up. And, you know, I'm in this, you know, I'm in the healing process. And so I sent her, you know, email messages like, well, are you going to put your experience online? I mean, are you going to talk about it? And she's like, no, I'm just going to let it go away and just, you know, I'm almost healed. And I sent her a message back saying, well, do you realize like you are harming people? You had an experience, and because of your dishonesty as well, you decide that you're just going to bury your head in the situation, right? I mean, that's codependent. Like, oh yeah, I don't want to put anything out public about somebody else, or I don't want to burn any bridges or whatever else. I don't want to tell the truth. You know, like I said, you're doing other people harm because you had this kind of event happen. And since you're not putting it out there and letting people know what's happened to you, like that could help a lot of people not to engage, a lot of people not to get hurt in the process. But what you're basically saying is that your codependency is too large for you to actually, you know, step up to the plate and actually put a blog out or something about the events that happened to you. And so in the process of doing that, not doing it, you're doing harm to other people because you know what the truth is. And you know it by your own experience. But it's interesting to me, like, you know, that controlled boundary that's kind of set in all of us. You know, if you don't have anything nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. Well, you know, life isn't nice. The truth, you know, isn't nice. And, you know, getting past some of these, you know, even non-verbalized behavioral traits that we've picked up. The way, you know, like family members will give us that look. And we just know what that look is, you know, like cool down, stop it, I better go to my room, you know, um, whatever kind of behavior. So when you see it on other people's faces, it's also a control mechanism for you to adjust your behavior without even like sometimes realizing it. But I think it's interesting that, you know, there's really good books called with Rudolf Steiner that I was in a study group that I started reading last winter called The Karma of Untruthfulness. And he wrote them around, you know, the first one around 1918. He was murdered in like 1924. We're almost going to be going to break. But I mean, you could actually take his book, and it's after World War I, during World War I. It's exactly the kind of stuff that's still going on today. And he talks about how everybody lies about everything. We lie about the history. We lie about, you know, the experience. We lie about the truth about everything. And so everything becomes karmic to everybody in collective because everything's a lie and everybody's lying. And nobody can tell the truth.
They're living the lie.
Well, that's it. You're living it, you're feeling it, you're sensing it, you're digging it, you're driving it, you know, like whatever. All right, we're on break. See you
Okay.
back in
Bye.
1 minute. Alrighty. Okay, so it's carrying stones and digging holes to cultivate consciousness. Host Kelsey Sweet, Bridgette Dolgoff. Our websites are a little funky right now, so it's really hard to get any of the back pages, and I think they're running on minimal because we were under some hacking. Yes, we were under hacking. All right, so I just want to put this out because I did get a new donation blurb today from our management. So, yep, we're going to do the donate thing. Forgot to do it at the beginning of the show. We got Patreon. Monthly donations can be made via Patreon page, but the donor must either be an existing Patreon, or B, sign up to become a member of Patreon in order to use the facility. And that's like a once a month donate. So yeah, and I think you can pretty much choose whatever you want, like $5 a month if you want. I don't know what we're putting up on the Patreon channel. I should look because I have my Patreon account. I should see what they've got going on over there. Also, we have a donation button, station's donation page, which is revolution.radio/donations. That you can do that as well. We have snail mail. That's usually at the bottom of the website. In case it's not, you can contact Terry Ackerman, and all checks and money orders are made payable to Revolution Radio and are posted to Terry Ackerman. And it's you can find that information at the bottom of our website with mailing address and everything. Direct payment option to support the stations electronically can also be made via the station donation page. And let's see what else. And oh, look, something new that I didn't know about. The station accepts support via cryptocurrency options. The currently accepted cryptocurrencies are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. So that's awesome. I have no idea where that link is. And then we also have Donorbox now, where you can donate if you're outside of the US, similar to PayPal. And let's see, donorbox.org/revolution dash radio. And then last but not least is our Zazzle store, zazzle.com rev radio. And we have all kinds of great stuff in there. Get some t-shirts, get some mugs. Yeah, support us. Okay, so there you go. That's what we've got. That's all we've got. That's what we've got. So you can help keep us rolling along because we really need donations to keep going. This COVID stuff's been pretty rough on anyone who has a business, and we volunteer 100% of our time. So all of us, even management, we all have separate jobs, and we do this for free as a public service. So please just donate just to keep our lights on. Yes, we just need to keep our lights on. All right, and I even sent in a donation. So yeah, if I can do it, you can do it. All right, so how about any last thoughts there, Kelsey, from the last hour before we take our test?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me make sure I'm okay. All right. Okay, so let's go to our test.
Do I have to answer?
No, you can just think about it, write it down for yourself. Okay, everybody, you're going to take a test, so write it down. You can write down the answers. Mostly it's just something to think about, right? And obviously, you know, like Kelsey said, we're in clinical psychology. arena, because they probably developed the whole idea of codependency, and it may or may not be real, depends, but something to think about. And you can find different ways to deal with a lot of behavior and memory, and getting your body worked on. You can help release muscle memory, getting your adjustments, chiropractor stuff. You release skeletal, it's skeletal reprogramming. So you release, stuff from your skeleton system, your endocrines, which could be like on the emotional level. But, so you can find different kinds of ways to release things. Therapy, talk therapy, life coaching, diet change. There's lots and lots of different ways, and I'm sure that lots of people out there have different ideas and answers to.
Exercise, creative practice.
Yeah, Kelsey. Yep, exactly. Poetry, journaling.
Nature.
Yeah. Yep. Lots and lots of stuff. Smelling a flower.
Smashing stuff.
I like herbal tea. Like, I collected a whole bunch of wild herbs this summer, and like right now I'm having herbal tea that I make. So yeah, it's all good. Okay, so here we go with the questions. Are you wondering if you have issues with codependency? Be honest with your answers to yourself. That's what it says. Okay. Do you find yourself constantly worried about other people's problems? Yes or no? When someone else acts inappropriately, do you feel guilty or embarrassed for him or her? Yes or no? Is it hard for you to say no when somebody else asks you for help? No. It's definitely a no. I've even tested myself over the years. Do you remain loyal even if another person or situation is harmful to you? No, absolutely not. All right. Do you find it hard to hold personal boundaries with other people? Yes or no? Is other people's approval very important to you? Yes or no? Do any of your relationships cause you to lose sleep, be stressed out, or lose motivation for other things in life? Yes or no? Right now, we could say, the collective of the United States is very codependent to what's going on with our political system right now, because people are stressed out, they're losing sleep, and lacking motivation to do things in their life. All right. After a fight or disagreement, do you feel like you must go get even? Yes or no? That's a big question. That's a loaded gun. Because I'm not really sure. I mean, I think that's a pretty adequate codependent question, but that's just a question that normally, I think would fall into like trying to figure out if you're bipolar or have, some personality disorders other than codependency. But anyway, all right. After winning an argument, do you feel you need to restate your point? Yes or no? Have you ever borrowed money to finance another person's addiction? Woo, is that? Yes or no? That is a serious, because if you borrowed money to help somebody else out, that addiction could be all kinds of different things. That addiction can cross a lot of territory. Okay. Do you feel reluctant to do things that you find important because it may cause an argument or disagreement? Have you ever dragged old hurts into a conversation, in a current conversation? Have you ever committed or considered committing a crime to finance someone's addiction? Yes or no? Woo, is that a big one? Do arguments, disappointments, or frustrations give you an urge to change someone else? That's a big question for my applied anthroposophy group, because their answer would be yes to that, trying to change the other person to see their point of view. And that's the thing. You change somebody, try to change somebody to see your point of view. Why do you need them so much in your life to change their point of view? Why can't you just let go of them and let them have their own point of view so that you could have your own point of view? It says, do you often sacrifice your own needs to care for a loved one? I've done a lot of that myself, so I guess I would have to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you often give your partner, spouse money or make excuses for his or her behavior? No. Yeah, no, that probably wouldn't happen. I'd probably call him out in the carpet in front of people. For sure. Do you believe that you can fix or are responsible for your loved one's addiction or mental illness? Yes or no? Boy, that's the ultimate shame and guilt trip.
Right.
Yeah. Do you often feel that your mood is affected by your partner's and spouse's moods? And I'm guilty of that. I catch myself all the time. Adapting to the environment.
I'm a sponge. I just soak it all up.
Does the thought of ending your relationship terrify you despite all its problems or how you feel about it? Let's see. Even if they hit you, especially if they're hitting you. That's where I really draw the line. Physical violence. I mean, like I may end up being stupid enough to stay in a situation where there's, mental and emotional abuse. But man, the first time there's like any kind of physical violence or they state that they want to do something violent towards me physically, that's the end. That's just the end. That's the end of the line, end of the road. Has to be. Let's see. And last question. Do you ever have an idea that if a loved ones would only see things your way, life would be much better? Yes or no? Talk about dominating, huh? Domineering. Nut job. Nut job. Okay, so it says, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So there's 20 questions, and they said that if you got 8, if you answered yes to 8, that you have some issues with codependency.
I have some like maybes on mind, or like I can see where,
Maybe.
where at one point things used to be really difficult, or in like certain situations and certain circumstances. I can definitely see how like me in my younger forms has been codependent in different versions of that. And I think so much of my life has been trying to seek autonomy and independence and wanting to do everything by myself, and being an only child of one parent, spending a lot of time alone and just being very okay with self. Working on like integrating with groups has been really challenging because like I just absorb so much of people's things. So I've had to work really hard over the years to get okay with putting myself first, or by like showing up and being an oddball, or just being authentic and not being so concerned about other people's reactions to things. That's tricky and it's taken a lot of work. And I think a lot of what studying psychology for 15 plus years or whatever now has been a lot of self-reflection and self-growth and learning and wanting to be a better and better person all the time, and learning and exploring different ways of doing that. But it's challenging, and I can see how in times of trauma I've definitely been more codependent, or how just getting absorbed into, you know, like the mental emotional, like manipulative side of abuse is, that can be tricky because that creeps up on you. It's
What do
not
you
a
think? What do you think your triggers are? I mean, I think my triggers would be definitely caretaking would be a total trigger. Somebody that needed help or was wounded, or caretaking would be a trigger I'd have to watch.
I think that like obsessive possessive ownership part is the part to watch, and just knowing like that each person within the relationship is responsible for their own emotions and for their own feelings, and not taking all of that on.
So are you saying personally that's your trigger?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, I really don't like being told what to do, and I don't like being possessed. I don't like when people expect me to do certain things. I really don't like when people get disappointed when I don't show up and do the things that they expect, and then judge or react from a space of their own projections. That part for me is really frustrating. But
So, one thing that when I was doing my, when I did my 20 minutes with Bridgette little videos I was doing over the summer, and I did the one on codependency, one of the things I realized is that, when you're dealing with codependency, because it's like the root of the weed, right? You don't know how far that root goes down. You don't know like what it's wrapped around. You can't see down there, right? You can't sense what's happening. So I think codependency is kind of like this root, but I realize like it can cause issues in all of your chakras, because there's going to be something, that each of your chakra, like energy bodies deal with different things. So every, part of yourself, spiritually, not spiritually, all of these different aspects of codependency, um, cause harm to, all of our bodies and even our, chakra bodies. I mean, definitely in shamanism, codependency would be really, really dangerous thing to have, because of how often you, because of your belief systems and your perceptions, would probably damage your own energy field. Like, if people go back to some of the stuff that Don Juan has said, and there's been some other really amazing shamanic people that have ended up in the public, and native teachers and all kinds of stuff. So, the teachers that I've studied with, and from what I've seen in people, when I look into their different timelines and their different energy bodies, is that, usually about the time you start having panic attacks is the time where your energy body is like a saran wrap, on the very outside. And so when it doesn't have any air left in it, or it doesn't have energy left in it because all these holes have been punctured in it and it's leaked all the energy out, it starts to wrap around the person energetically, it starts to suffocate them. And basically it's a symptom of, an alarm symptom, so that you'll recognize that you need to fill that energy body up. Because in the type of shamanism I do, The illusion is that we die of cancer or this or that, but the truth is that the energy field just doesn't have any more energy in order to run the physical body, the machine. So codependency would be a thing where you would end up puncturing holes in your own energy field. And one of my teachers that I studied with, Lakota Sioux medicine teacher, years ago when I was 23, she said that, you know, in the first 8 levels of our energy field, out 64 layers, that, you know, and it contains weapons. So we have a knife, we have a sword, we have a staff. You know, we have in those 8 fields, we have weapons. And what I've come to learn working on people is that those weapons are never where they're supposed to be in the energy field. I can find them in usually their physical body poking out, or their energy body, or some other layer. I can find those weapons, and then, you know, I have to kind of return them back to the first 8 layers where they belong. But people end up stabbing their energy field probably more so than it gets stabbed and leaking by other people and events. So codependency could be, you know, really challenging and dangerous for longevity, for the physical health of your body, for, I mean, you know, think about how, I mean, let's talk about the physical heart. Think about how revved up your physical heart could get over some of these things, you know, we took the test on. Guilt, shame, anger, domination. There's all kinds of stuff here that could also affect, you know, the different organs. I mean, think about liver deals with, you know, anger, and the gallbladder deals with sourness, and, you know, each organ could be amplified by emotions that we're dealing with in our codependency. And so we're just, you know, it's hardcore self-damage on every level. And I don't think, you know, like I thought about like doing a thing on how do we get there? How do we get to be codependent? But, you know, the last 3 years, it's like I have to constantly remind myself to stay out of the past, stay out of the past, because what happens is that we start thinking about the past and we get stuck there, and then we start feeding it energy. And then we start becoming obsessed with the things that we remember in the past. And what's the, instead of just going, you know what? It just doesn't matter. The only thing I can do is focus in on now. You know, how do I extricate myself from codependent behavior? These feelings, you know, work in the now that creates your future. Don't go to the past to change your future, because your future will be your past. That's what happens. So I didn't want to put anything in here so that it would say things like, well, you could have been abused in your childhood. Well, you know what? It's over. Like, I'm 52 years old. You know, like at some point, you just gotta shut the door and think about what you're going to do now and how you want to feel now. And then what is that? Put one foot in front of the other and soon you'll be walking out the door. So yeah, so codependency is stuck. So you got to get moving forward. So sometimes you just got to, you know, stop processing stuff. And, you know, like I think a lot about people get super codependent on things like tarot cards and past life regressions and, you know, all of these kinds of things that, I mean, they really don't matter. They don't really tell you who you really are. Tell you maybe what you might have been in the past. It doesn't really tell you now. spend a lot of time, and so you're not eating the right food, you're not cooking for yourself, you're not putting intention and energy into the present moment and all the things that you're doing now. You're still like feeding the past.
Well, tarot cards too, they're a mirror. In any mirror, any surface that's reflecting an image back, there's distortion. There's information that's bended, like it can see parts and things, but it's not the whole system. I keep getting hung up on the hard to say no part. And this, I guess, like the loyalty thing, and loyalty to things that are harmful or not harmful, or like discernment comes up through that too. But I think what ties all the pieces together for me is that it's so difficult to, how do I want to put it? There's a lot of information like kind of coming at me, so I'm filing. But I guess what I find myself teaching people, or what comes up in sessions a lot, or like what continues to show up and what I'm getting better at doing myself, is not taking responsibility for other people's emotions. And only taking responsibility and accountability for my own emotions and reactions in those situations, and to not take other people's emotions personally, can be really challenging. Because it means with people that you care about or that you love, there's this idea that in love we have to stick it out, or we have to show up and do things for another person. And it can be tricky, because then we get into this idea of like unconditional love, and what is unconditional love. You can love somebody unconditionally, but you can still say no. You can still like keep your holes from being punctured in, or keep, your walls from being punctured into holes and things. I think there's just a level of grace and balance that has to come with it. And it can be turbulent at times, but it's learned. I think it's something that can be learned, maybe to an extent. Because there's like the idea that in theory you could take somebody who is psychotic, right? And then you can teach them to not be psychotic. But we've found, or oftentimes in studies, or what we have seen through history, is that's near impossible to do. I mean, people just, if they're nutso, they just kind of stay there. And I think that's kind of true with people in a lot of their emotional states. They can only get so far through the information and being able to feel all the things at all the different levels, because it's so much information and it's so overwhelming. And instead of being conscious and aware and attuned to it all the time, it's so easy just to check out and get into codependent situations and people-pleasing situations, where in the moment people are getting like the immediate feedback, or like immediate payoffs, but there's no long-term reinforcement. In the long term, they don't understand how certain things can be bad, or people make a lot of sacrifices to feel good in the now. Like with people who drink alcohol, it can feel good in the moment, but in the morning, or 50 years down the road, it's going to have a huge impact on your well-being and your way of being. So I think there's a lot of being not codependent requires tolerating discomfort and being disciplined enough to be uncomfortable, because it's important to be uncomfortable. But I think people who do a lot of this work, or a lot of the spiritual growth and practices, they get really caught up in being comfortable and being uncomfortable all the time, that there's like the fear, or there's an anxiety around comfort itself.
Let me just throw a wrench in there. and get your opinion. What if we're taking this like all too seriously and this is just a past life that we're remembering that's already been lived already? Or something I think about a lot, maybe in some of the accidents I've had in the past, maybe I did die and I'm in a coma, and maybe I'm just dreaming this.
I always wonder about that with dreams, especially with dreams, because so many of my dreams are prophetic in different ways. Or I think the issue of sleep came up too, and having things like sleep being so difficult. And there's so many different people have sleep difficulties. And when I was younger, I had a really difficult time sleeping. I had to learn how to do that, and my dreams then were really intense. But now, like, through the dreaming process, I've noticed that a lot of my dreams in being kind of prophetic. Like, I had 2 dreams where I think probably within the last couple of nights, I'm not really exactly sure when I had them, but the visuals were so clear. And one of them, like, it was my stimulus money or whatever, the stimulus check money that came in. And then another one, it was seeing half of one of my pendulums somewhere, but they were like pointed together. And then my stimulus money came in today. But I almost knew going into the mailbox that, like, my dream was like so in alignment with that one moment, because I had some anxieties about it, but then I just put it out there because we had this conversation the other day. And then I had a weird connection between
What
all
if it was,
reality.
instead of it was like some kind of intuitive or psychic thing, what if it was just a memory of this life that we had in the past already that we're fixated on and we're paying attention to, but we've already lived it? And so there's moments where we think it's intuition and we think that it's psychic, but the fact is that there's part of us that's already lived this before, so it knows exactly what's going to happen moment by moment. And that's the information we get. I'm not putting you on the spot, but
No,
this is
it
crazy
makes a
stuff
lot
that I
of
think about all the time. And then I think, well, then why would I take this reality so real? Do you know what I mean? When there's so many different kinds of possibilities,
Well, it
you
makes a
know.
lot of sense too, especially when it comes to understanding what that reality is, because we're like learning how to control the manifestation of how that reality is experienced. Because like through the dreams, they were very, like when I was younger, just super intense and vivid, but like dark. And then they would happen around certain times, but then slowly, like, it's just eased out. So like sleep is easier, but the information is more clear. But the more in alignment that I get, the more things just naturally make sense. I think where my seriousness comes into play is like getting caught into the cycles of what does it all mean? Where are we all going with it? What's the point? And I think perhaps it's what is the point behind it all then? Okay, so my question then is, through this over analyze, just like nitpicking or looking at things through a lens of seriousness or like a clinical window, what's the point to all of it? I don't know that it would have to have one, but I feel like in people who are struggling with the will to live or the will to create or the will to go on, like people want to find meaning in
But
the
what if that's all codependent? Finding a meaning to go on outside of myself seems like it kind of fits into that codependent questionnaire, right?
yeah.
which is not a good thing, going and looking for meaning for your life in someone else or a job or event. I mean, I don't really know what the answers are, but I have to come to some kind of, for me, sanity is like looking at all the options of what could possibly be, and then keeping myself out of the system programming, patterning, emotional trigger control. The key is that I just don't want my reality to be in control of me or how I choose to feel.
I think why I get caught up in the seriousness or like the psychology of it is because from the perspective of myself as an artist in that creative practice, it's really easy to get absorbed into the different levels of what is it and what is this and that, and there's a sense of detachment that happens from things like responsibilities or like responsibilities of having a kid or having people who are dependents, and because there has to be something to ground into like this material world, or there has to be some sort of reverence for other people's experiences, and then some sort of shared reality between it, and in that realm is where we connect. And I think that's why we come up with this concept of time.
Yeah.
Within
So,
time,
the thing is, I think the difference is like you can have a kid, raise the kid really well, and then, be able to let them go out and have their life. Or the codependent thing is control, manipulate their life, and so that they can't live their life without you. Right. So I think, and then they resent you for it. Right. So then you have a whole other thing. So I think it's like a pretty clear boundary. But I want to play this video before we get too far, because I think it might go through the end of the show. But I wanted people to listen to this because it was an incredible freeing watching it the other day and listening to it. The Shaolin monk had to say about how we should be living our life, right? And how they're taught in their practice, their spiritual practice. So let me see if I can get it up and going because sometimes I can't. And okay, hopefully. Okay, I got the video and everything. Okay, here we go. So let's see, hopefully the volume is up enough that people can. If not, it's Master Shay Hang, and he is on TED.com, and this is called The